She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kiana, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a corset top. Woo! Yeah, you probably already saw it in the intro, but anyways, it's real cute. I'm real excited about it. I just wanted to kind of hop on the corset trend because all of these corset tops have been going like crazy viral on TikTok, and I was like, maybe I can ride that wave to fame. Just kidding. One thing to note, I just want to get this out of the way because it does kind of kill me inside every time I call it a corset. I'm going to be referring to it as a corset because that's what everyone knows it as, like on TikTok, on YouTube. We're all calling these boned bodices corsets. It's not a corset. Just because it has boning in a top does not mean it's a corset. There's boning in a lot of different things you probably don't even realize. Like there's boning in most special occasion dresses. A corset is something that is meant to reshape, modify your waistline completely. This is just a cute, sassy crop top that we added some boning in. But I'll be calling it a corset because everyone's calling it a corset. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make a corset crop top. So I'm going to be showing you how you can drape and pattern this exact corset top yourself, but I'm also kind of giving you the knowledge and tools, so if you want to change some of the style lines, you'll be able to do that on your dress form. But I'm sure not all of you have dress forms, so I've uploaded the pattern that I personally created in the description below. Luckily, all the pieces were like small enough to fit in a scanner, so that's why I'm able to do that, because I don't have an industrial size scanner. So luckily all the pieces fit on my printer scanner, so I was able to give that to you guys for free. Yeah, so I have that link for you guys in the description, so you can download that, print it out on regular 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. I would recommend using a cardstock just because it's more durable. But yeah, let's just get into the video. I'm sure you all want to learn how to make this crop top. You did not click on this video to hear me talk, so let's start learning. Okay, so we're just gonna first start off by choosing our style lines. I'm using some washi tape actually to mark out my neckline, my hemline, my seam lines. They actually have real tape for your dress form, but I didn't have that, and those can be really sticky, so I just honestly prefer to use washi tape. So yeah, so you can just pick whatever style lines you want. These are the ones I've chosen to use. And then also, if you notice, I have that piece of muslin fabric across the bust. This is a bust bridge, and you can add that if you want to ensure that your corset, your top, whatever you're making at the time, doesn't collapse between your bust. So that just ensures that when we pattern it, our final garment will not, collapse between your bust. It'll stand straight out. So that's why I have that there. Now I'm taking a piece of muslin fabric and I'm pinning that along the center front of my garment. I'm also watching Dance Moms at this time, so you'll see me keep looking at the TV. But if you notice, I have a pencil line drawn straight up and down on that piece of fabric, and that is my grain line. So when I put that fabric, or when I put that pattern piece down on my final fabric, I know how to orient that pattern piece. Now I'm just smoothing out the fabric, pinning along our seam lines that we chose, our style lines, and then I'm marking it with a pencil so that we can figure out what the pattern piece is going to end up looking like. Now we are going to take that pattern piece off the form and true it up. So we're just going to kind of connect the dots with all the little dots we made along the style line, make it nice and smooth with our curved and straight rulers. And then after that, you kind of got your pattern piece. Make sure you label your pattern piece, and I cut it out just with about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch seam allowance. This isn't a real seam allowance. This is just so we can pin it back up against the form. So pin it up against the form before you make your next pattern piece. Some people make them individually without pinning up the previous pieces onto the form. This is just the way that I was taught in fashion school, and I really like this way because it kind of accounts for if your pattern pieces shift a little bit, move a little bit, stretch a little bit. This just makes sure that you get the perfect fit. So I always pin back up my previous pieces before patterning my next piece. So that's what I'm doing here. Now I'm grabbing a new piece of fabric. Notice that I have a grain line on it as well, so we keep everything organized. We know how to orient it later on, and I'm gonna just repeat that exact same process. Pin it up, smooth out the fabric, and then mark it with a pencil. And then we're gonna take it down, true that up again, and then connect that piece with the last piece that we made and put it up on the form like this before doing the next pattern piece. And I'm going to keep repeating this process over and over until we have our final muslin, our final prototype done. So this is what our final prototype looks like. I have everything clearly marked, everything pinned on the form, and as you notice, I have a little space in the back because when we lace it up, I want it to be tight on me. Now we're gonna make our final pattern pieces on some cardstock that I have. You could use manila paper, whatever. I just like some durable paper. I took down those muslin pattern pieces, I cut them off at the outer edges, at the lines that we marked initially, and then I traced that out onto a piece of cardstock. Now I'm choosing to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance, not 1/2 inch. Usually I do 1/2 inch, but since this is very close to the body, close fit, very specific, I wanted 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that's what I'm doing right now. Do that to all your pieces and then just cut that out. Make sure you label it, that's really important. I put the type of garment it is, which pattern piece it is, and then how much to cut of that pattern piece. And then of course add your green line so you're organized and you know how to orient your pattern piece on the fabric. Now I'm just cutting everything out, and here are all my pattern pieces. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pattern pieces. Now I'm laying that out on my fabric. I cut 2 of each pattern piece because 1 for each side. Make sure you cut, opposite sides, a left and a right, not 2 lefts. And so that's just what I'm doing right here. This is all the pattern pieces I have for my fashion fabric, the shell, which is a nice lavender satin, and then I'm just gonna show you what order of operations you wanna use when sewing. So first I do the little side bust cups, then I connect those bust cups to the piece under it, and then you can just sew all those vertical seam lines. And I would show you how to sew, but I feel like that's an entirely different video. So this is our shell, and then you're just gonna repeat that exact process with the lining. And then after that, you are going to put those 2 pieces right sides together and sew all the way up on the neckline and also down the sides using 1/4 inch seam allowance. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Flip that out and then give it a nice press with your iron like so it's nice and crisp and beautiful. This is me realizing that when I pull across the neckline, it stretches a little bit, so I decided to add some twill tape. You can get twill tape at Joann's. It'll help keep your garment from not stretching across the neckline, and it'll keep it fitted close to your body. So, I recommend that you add that, but it's definitely not an essential. So I just stitched that to the seam allowance, not to the garment, really close to the seam allowance like this. And yeah, and now it won't stretch and it'll fit close to your body at your neckline. Now we're gonna choose our boning. This is featherlight boning and this is spiral steel boning. We need to have a serious discussion about boning. So many people on TikTok have been using zip ties as boning. Please do not do that. It would just hurt my heart. I mean, you can do that. You're your own person. You can do whatever you want, but I seriously advise you to do not do that. Yes. So like zip ties are not meant to be boning. Zip ties, while they have the same initial look potentially, they are not gonna last over time. For example, if you bend a zip tie, it's bent forever. Like if you crease it, it's folded, it's done. You're done. You're done. You're gonna have a weird crinkle in your shirt for the rest of your life, and you worked so hard on that shirt. So why are you gonna use zip ties? My best recommendation for boning would be spiral steel boning, which I will show right here, and I will link down below. Spiral steel boning is not something that you can buy at Joann's. Unfortunately, Joann's carries the crappy types of boning, which are still better than zip ties. So if you can't get spiral steel boning, go for real boning. Find some at Joann's. I'll link some of that down below. Spiral steel boning, one, is not gonna get deformed if you crease it ever so slightly. It'll bounce back. And 2, if you use zip ties, that plastic is just gonna melt if you iron over it. If you need to iron a crease out of it, you cannot do that with zip ties, but you can definitely do that with spiral steel boning. So again, please don't use zip ties. Anything else, anything else, anything else. But biggest recommendation is spiral steel boning. I use it here. I use it for everything. I love it. It's fabulous. The only thing is, you gotta be strong to cut it. Obviously, I am not a strong person, so I get my boyfriend to cut it for me. But that's the only downside. The pros of this type of boning, there are many. There are many. So I'm just gonna leave you with that, and we're gonna move on. Okay, now that I talked to you extensively and for a ridiculous amount of time about boning, I really apologize, but I'm using pre-cut pieces of boning that I got my boyfriend to cut for me, and I'm sewing the casing for the boning onto all of those vertical seam lines, leaving about a 1/2 inch in the middle for that 1/4 inch boning to go through. Notice how I didn't go all the way to the end for the casing or the boning, because we need to sew the binding on the hem and we cannot sew through the metal. So now I'm making the binding by myself because I am fancy as heck. You can buy binding that matches from Joann's, but I'm extra, and you also don't need to use a tool like that. You just fold it in twice, fold it like towards the center and then fold it in half, and then you got some binding. Also, binding needs to be cut just on the diagonal of the fabric so it can stretch like so. Then once you have the binding, I am putting that on the hemline of our corset and stitching in that first fold like so, pulling it slightly around the curves so it fits nicely like this. And then after that, I'm folding in the edge and stitching that down so that the sides or the back will be very nicely finished. And then I am clipping that, clip the thread, and then folding the binding in on itself into the other side. And then I'm stitching in that little seam line between the binding and the bodice, and I'm making sure that the needle is picking up the fabric on the other side for the binding. I don't know if that makes sense. So that the binding will stay. I will link a video on how to put on binding if that was too confusing for you. Binding is kind of tricky, but I'll just link a video down below. Now I'm putting in the eyelets on the back as my closure, marking where I want to put those eyelets, and then you have to make a hole. So I use a seam ripper first to make the initial hole. Then I switch over to a little X-Acto knife. I think they have tools to put in eyelets that make a good little hole, but I don't have those. So I slip the eyelet in, I put it on, I don't know what that device is called, and then I hammer it in with a mallet. And then boom, you do that to all of those, and then you just lace it up. I use some satin string, and then you're done. Wow, how freaking cute. Who is she? Modern day Rapunzel? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so that's it, and now you have a cute freaking crop top. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, maybe possibly 3. If you recreate this look, DM me a picture on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, I don't know how that works, but you know, hit me up at Kiana Bonollo. Also, be sure to subscribe to me here and like, comment. Let me know if you have any questions, if you're struggling with any of the directions I gave you, because I will be happy to help you, happy to walk you through anything. So yeah, just leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time. Bye.